Imagine dedicating years of your life to a job that's meant to safeguard millions of people's financial security, only to discover that someone who held that very trust used it to commit one of the most audacious frauds imaginable. This is, according to reports, allowed them to siphon off enormous sums of money by exploiting the identities of deceased individuals. Our story begins in a quiet office, where the hum of computers and the steady rhythm of clerks at their desks belied the drama that would later unfold. Working at the Social Security Administration, employees are entrusted with some of the most personal information any person can have: Social Security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and financial records. These are the building blocks of identity in the United States, and they are meant to be guarded with the utmost care. Yet, for reasons that are still partially shrouded in speculation, someone who once served within these walls chose a path that betrayed that trust. Reports indicate that the individual in question had access to a trove of data on people who had passed away. These records, while seemingly dormant, are incredibly valuable in the wrong hands. Public speculation suggests that the former employee realized that by exploiting this data, they could create a stream of illicit income that would be difficult to trace back. The methodology, as investigators have suggested, was both cunning and meticulous, relying on the very systems designed to protect the public to circumvent safeguards and manipulate the financial system. The first questions that come to mind are, often, how could this happen, and why wasn't it caught sooner? Some analysts point to systemic vulnerabilities that exist in large bureaucracies. When millions of records are processed daily, the ability to monitor every single transaction in real time is limited. It's not a matter of negligence so much. Within such an environment, someone with detailed insider knowledge can find gaps that outsiders would never see. The former employee's scheme involved taking the identities of people who had recently passed away and using them to open accounts, submit claims, or divert funds. Each step was calculated to minimize the risk of immediate detection. Financial institutions and government agencies have various safeguards, but when faced with someone who understands the system from the inside, these safeguards can sometimes be circumvented. This kind of fraud is not just about money. It carries a human dimension that is often overlooked. Each identity used in this scheme belonged to a real person, and while they were deceased, the legacy of their identity is a deeply personal matter for surviving family members. Reports suggest that families discovered anomalies in accounts or received communications that were entirely unexpected. The realization that a loved one's identity had been co-opted for criminal purposes adds a layer of emotional impact that transcends the financial loss. As the investigation unfolded, law enforcement agencies began piecing together the scope of the operation. Publicly available records and investigative reporting indicate that the scheme spanned multiple years with careful timing and execution. Auditors, cybersecurity experts, and federal investigators collaborated to identify patterns and track the flow of money. Because the usual indicators of fraud were cleverly masked, one of the most compelling aspects of this story is the way it highlights the tension between trust and vulnerability in modern bureaucracies. That data will be used responsibly, and that oversight mechanisms will function as intended. Yet, even in well-established institutions, the combination of access, knowledge, and intent can produce outcomes that are startling in their audacity. Observers have suggested that this case serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of continuously reviewing and updating security protocols, particularly in environments that handle sensitive personal information. Midway through this story, it's worth pausing to consider the human element. What drives someone to turn from a role of trust into a position of exploitation? Psychologists and criminologists often explore the interplay of opportunity, rationalization, and perceived risk. While we can't definitively answer why this former employee made the choices they did, some reports suggest that a combination of financial incentive, insider knowledge, and perhaps a sense of invincibility contributed to their decision-making process. It's a reminder that systems are only as strong as the people who operate within them, and that vigilance is always necessary. Even in institutions that seem inherently secure, investigators eventually identified irregularities that triggered deeper scrutiny. Audit trails, unexpected patterns in account activity, and tip-offs from within the agency itself all played a role in exposing the fraud. When confronted with evidence, the former employee's actions were laid bare, and the scale of the theft became apparent. The public reaction was one of shock, disbelief, and a growing concern about how such a breach of trust could occur in a system meant to protect millions of citizens. This case also sparked a broader conversation about identity theft, data security, and the ethics of access. Experts highlighted that while government agencies implement safeguards, the evolving nature of fraud requires constant adaptation. Technological advancements have made it possible to track and analyze patterns that were previously invisible. Yet they also create new avenues for misuse. The story of this former employee illustrates both the risks and the potential for proactive improvements in security measures, emphasizing that vigilance must be ongoing. Another dimension of the case that captured public attention was the recovery process. Tracing the stolen funds and addressing the impact on affected families required coordination across multiple agencies. Some reports suggest that the restitution process is complex and ongoing, involving not just financial recovery but also measures to restore confidence in the systems designed to protect citizens. The human impact, however, lingers. Families grappling with the realization that a loved one's identity was misused, and citizens questioning the security of their personal information. By now, the story has unfolded into a tapestry of trust, betrayal, and systemic vulnerability. It serves as a reminder that even the most seemingly stable institutions are not immune to misuse. Yet it also highlights the importance of investigative diligence, the commitment of law enforcement, and the mechanisms in place to uncover wrongdoing, even when it takes years. The narrative is not just about one individual's actions, but about the resilience of systems, the dedication of professionals who detect and respond to fraud, and the ongoing challenge of balancing accessibility with security. Returning to the broader implications, this case has prompted discussions within government circles about policy reform. Some reports suggest that agencies are exploring enhanced auditing techniques, improved data monitoring systems, and stricter controls on employee access to sensitive information. These measures are aimed not only at preventing future incidents, but also at reassuring the public that the integrity of essential social programs remains intact. While the former employee's actions exposed vulnerabilities, they also sparked a process of learning and improvement that could make similar frauds less likely in the future. For viewers, there is a subtle yet important lesson embedded in this story. It's easy to think of fraud as an abstract concept, something that happens to faceless institutions or distant entities. But here, we see that fraud intersects with human lives, family legacies, and the everyday trust that citizens place in governance systems. It's a cautionary tale about the value of vigilance, both personal and institutional, and the need for systems that can detect and respond to misuse swiftly and effectively. As we reach the conclusion of this story, it's worth reflecting on the broader societal context. In an age where data drives decision-making, the protection of personal information has never been more critical. Social security numbers, financial records, and identity markers are not just numbers on a page. They represent lives, histories, and trust. When that trust is breached, the consequences ripple outward, affecting families, communities, and public confidence. Yet even in the face of such breaches, the story also reveals the dedication of professionals who work tirelessly to detect, investigate, and address fraud, ensuring that justice is pursued and systems are strengthened in the end. The case of the former Social Security employee is a story that balances caution with hope. It reminds us that while vulnerabilities exist, human diligence, oversight, and the commitment to ethical standards can restore order and security. The lessons learned are both practical and philosophical, highlighting the interplay between trust, access, and accountability. It's a story that resonates because it's about more than just fraud. It's about the human capacity to protect, to learn, and to adapt. If this story made you think, pause, or reflect, consider sharing your perspective in the comments below. Your thoughts contribute to an ongoing conversation about ethics, security, and the responsibility we all share in safeguarding information. And if you found this narration engaging, subscribing to the channel ensures you won't miss future stories that explore the human side of complex real-world events.